They say that there are 3 levels of conversation. Level 1 is when people talk about other people. Level 2 is when people talk about events. There's nothing wrong with either of those, but this is Level 3 Studio. Level 3 is when people talk about ideas and what is possible. Welcome to Level 3 Studio, aka Chef Jay's Kitchen, aka the Innovator's Oasis, where the food feeds your body, the questions feed your mind, and the experience, without a doubt, feeds your soul. Let's take a toast. Yeah. Cheers, cheers, cheers. Yeah. Cheers, 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 cheers. Right. Cheers, cheers, cheers. Cheers.
Oh, yeah, I got a drink. Yeah.
Kelsey.
Yes.
What's it like being a white woman in America?
I think the first conversation that comes to mind about that is privilege. I mean, your history, already you're set up for a large level of success. Not as much as a white man.
Like, but still quite a bit.
So much privilege. And one of the biggest and most important things to do as a white woman is recognize said privilege. As a feminist, intersectional feminism is the most important thing to me. You're not a feminist if you're not intersectional.
Intersectional feminism, we're going to get to that because
hell yeah, we will.
You'll educate me on that. Okay, I digress. Beautiful answer. To my right, Katie Mabry Van Deeren, owner, curator, Strawberry Swing, co-founder, Truth Market Collective. To her right, Brandon Love, founder of Crumble Co., anti-suicide and pro-joy aroma company, host of Love Stream TV. Is that correct? Love Stream TV? Okay. Has an upcoming book, Fuck Anxiety, and VP of KCMO Downtown District.
Neighborhood Association.
Neighborhood Association.
There we go.
She wants to get them facts right. Get that resume correct. Get that resume correct. To his right, Gabriel, local entrepreneur. Short and simple.
Oh, yeah.
To my left, Travis, commercial photographer, documentarian, documentary photographer, visual artist, and overthinker, as most of us are. If you don't admit it, you're lying.
I connect. I resonate with it.
Adjacent across from me, Kelsey, digital editor of The Pitch, local alternative magazine, owner of Cat Call, which is a feminist blog. And as always, Pat Rob 2 Raw, aka Late Nights with 3 Z's. Don't forget the 17. Okay. I love it. Yes. Cool. Cool. So first segment, practical and tactical. Like a lot of why we started this was to try to help people develop better habits, and to really just Pat, Rob, and I, and everyone kind of in our tight circle has always been, man, how can I get better like day to day? Like I'm working on my philosophy, I'm working on my beliefs. What are like the day to day things that I can do? So we'll start there and have anyone jump in as you wish. You can start from like a cultural perspective. What do you spend your time doing, as in what impact on the culture are you trying to move? It could be Kansas City regionally, or when you wake up in the morning, what's the first thing that you try to get correct? Whoever wants to lead off.
Oh, geez. Oh man, pressure's on. Pressure's on. All right. Well, I guess a lot of what I start my day off with, or I guess a lot of what my focus is kind of a lot of internal movement, I guess, rather than external, suppose. I realize I don't spend a whole lot of time with myself, or I don't. Yeah, I just don't spend a lot of time with myself because I'm constantly working, and then outside of work, I'm constantly hustling my personal hustles. You know how that is, and doing podcasts. Yes.
What is it? Right. What does it mean to spend time with yourself?
So it's easy to spend time with your passions and the things that you are that you enjoy, essentially, right? They can be things that fuel your outlook on life. But when it boils down to it, when you wake up in the morning with that, when it's the last hour that you're awake or the first hour that you're awake, you don't really get to spend a whole lot of time inside hanging out with yourself. You're kind of hanging out with the things that that kind of distract you from the things that kind of make you, I guess. Your passions do make you, they drive you, but at the end of the day, like, who are you, there's totally uncensored. Yeah. There's still a lot of you inside that I guess we tend to not hang out with. Mm-hmm. It's like that concept of like hanging out with yourself, right? Yeah. And
what does that as a practice look like for you?
So a lot of it is just really trying to wake up a little bit earlier. And like, I'm not talking ridiculous or anything, but like 7 o'clock, right? I have to work at 9, right? So if I just spend that time from like 7 to 8:30, or 8 rather, and just like, hey, I'm gonna drink a glass of water and just like sit here for a second and just kind of allow myself to like slow down and not necessarily meditate, but like a form of that, right? So it's more of just like understanding your physical self before you go out and lose yourself in the things that you're interested in or you're chasing or whatever, right? It's just trying to find that physical connection, because the passions and the things like those are great, obviously, but like it's when you really sit down with yourself and it's like, are you sore today? Are you tired? Are you stressed? Whatever. Just giving yourself context before you start your day, because this idea of like, am I in the red zone? Am I in the green zone? And like, how does that affect your stuff before? If you just wake up and like go do your thing and then you realize everything's going wrong and you're like super upset, but you haven't really processed the fact that you were kind of in the red zone anyway before you start all of this, like it just helps me gain context to my hustles. Yeah, and just kind of just being in tune and being connected with these things.
Kelsey, do you try to find balance in the days? Like, the belief between like, if you want to achieve something, there is no balance, or like, are you someone in day to day you're trying to balance everything?
Yeah, I think it's a mix. I think ideally I want to have balance between like my career and my passions, my relationships with friends, my relationship with my cat, and my relationship with myself. But at the same time, like for me, as someone who like struggles with mental health, is like has had like those issues in the past, what it boils down to is what's the best thing for me in the moment. So if the best thing for me is to cancel plans and stay in and like spend time with myself, I'm always going to do that first. And I know the people that are in my life who are my friends are going to support that decision and know that like if I need to be alone. Yeah, I legit canceled on him on Sunday. I was like, I need to spend some time by myself. Like, I'm not feeling myself today. Like, if I come out and hang out with you, like, I'm not going to give you the quality of conversation and interaction that you deserve as another human. And I know you understand that, like, when I say I need to be alone, like, I need to fucking be alone.
I love how you mentioned that, because like today I almost canceled out. Like, like just
Was it
because
'cause
I
you
wanted to
needed
be
to be alone?
I wanted to be alone. Like, I worked real early in the morning, and I never really have time to myself, like mentally just think back and sit back and dissect everything that I'm involved in. But it's like my bro Nick, like I can't turn this down, and then it's like meeting incredible people. Like in my head, it's like, okay, I need to challenge myself, and the only way I can challenge myself is by showing up.
Well, that's a serious question. Like the balance between, do I need to have more mental fortitude, more mental toughness in my day, or do I need to have some recognition that I've done enough today?
I'm like Kelsey. I'm dealing with white privilege as a woman all the time, and what I've partnered with on the Truce Market Collective is we're trying to bring equitable development onto Truce.
Bring
Equitable development, because you guys have probably read a lot of the articles that are just now coming out about stuff going on Truce, and what we're trying to do is bring like communal maker spaces for the community. Like, there will be residencies, but also paying members, and then there'll be programming for the kids to come in and do stuff, and like places where people can actually hang out and not have to pay, right?
Yeah.
So stuff, and also restaurants.
Like really building community.
Yeah, and like I'm a white girl, and I was asked to be part of this because of what I do for my income, which is the Strawberry Swing, because I have a big maker community. So at the board meeting today, we were talking about like we got to do a survey to get like some interest, because we're going to be able to start opening soon, but we need all this information, right? And like I had drafted this survey, and my board president, who's like a racial justice educator, she's amazing. She was like, who are you going to send this to? And I'm like, my makers and anyone that signed up on the mailing list and anyone I met in person. She's like, how are you going to get out into the community? Like, those people are probably people that have already come to you for something. Like, you got to get it out. And I'm like, yeah, we do. How are we going to do that? We got to, like, I thought about it, but I hadn't really thought about how we're going to, like, reach out and have, like, an internet survey. Like, we got to get a paper survey. We got to go door to door. We got to do all kinds of different things, you know? And that's just a lot of stuff that...
So on your best day, what are you trying to get done?
In general? On my best day... oh, man. On my best day, here's what I would love to have done. Sleep in, be a great mom and a great wife. Also, build small businesses through the Strawberry Swing. Like, help somebody make a sale, help someone get off the ground, and then Truce Market Collective, get that community together.
Yeah.
bridge that divide.
Love it. We'll get into that's a big conversation. Yeah, I'm excited though. No, because I'll share in a bit. Brandon, what do you spend your time doing, man?
Mic time. I mean, the last couple of years, I spent a lot of time kind of obsessing over, and that's kind of what got me where I'm at. Obsessing over how to live my life day to day. I used to build schedules out the night before. I used to have this rhythmic way of living so that I could achieve the things I wanted to achieve. And by part, it helped me get places, but it was kind of tearing me apart. So I spent this last year kind of just going, okay, well, just look at what you like to do. Where can we just improve this shit that you just like to do? The things that you're doing naturally when you stray away from these bullshit schedules that you kind of tie yourself to that you don't even like. And this last year, I'm like, okay, I'm a Facebook boy. How can we improve my Facebook experience? I stopped sharing all the funny stuff. I stopped sharing all the kind of bull crap, arguing with people. I started engaging conversations. I started having an impact that I wanted to have on Facebook. And just that one big change right there changed like 3 hours of my day that I spend on Facebook anyway, from like funny haha cat videos, sorry Kelsey, to like, okay, engaging conversations, exercising my brain, feeling like my impact is worthwhile.
Yeah.
I'm a big EQ guy, so I judge everything off like kind of how I feel. So like I'll know I'm one of those ones that usually tries to schedule the majority of my day the day before. So like when I go home tonight, I'm gonna go home and try to lay out my day like literally in 15-minute increments.
That's what you try to do every day?
Yeah. Well, like it'll be like I have the schedule written down like 8:15, but it'll be from like 8 to 8:45 is when I'm gonna do whatever. So I wake up early. I wake up about 5, and I usually try to win the day early. And I read a book. I forgot the guys. Jocko Willink was a military cat, Navy SEALs guy. Yeah, extreme ownership. Talked about like, hey, like making your bed, and like so, you'd be surprised, like especially as lazy as I was, like waking up, like shit. Dude,
Like the impact that makes?
Yeah, just taking the 1 minute just to tuck the bed in. It's tough, like it's tough. But when you're done, you're like, dude, it feels real good. And so that's the first way I feel like I got a little win. And then I go shower, and then I do a little meditation, say a quick prayer, do a little reading, and then eat some breakfast. Then I'm off. And I look at my calendar, and it's like, all right. I usually try to say, what's the number one thing that I need to do today? Usually it's related to kind of client stuff. And it's like, if I do that, I feel good. Even if I get nothing else done on my list after that, it's like, at least I got that one thing. So I usually base it just off of kind of how I feel.
Gotcha. Love it.
I love our contrast right here. I spent so many years trying to like find the solution through books like all these, and it just, there's no such thing as a solution. It's kind of like you have to try something new. Next year I might be like, well, last year I just willy-nilly'd it and played on Facebook with a fool. But I'm moving forward.
The willingness to try it and be like, okay, yeah, this isn't working.
So there's no solution, but then at the same time, you're basically focused on building the habits around and making you a better person, like personal development. So if you equip the two, like I think that stuff can take you to astronomical levels in life.
Boy, you was astronomical.
Like real, like I believe so. I believe so because sometimes you just never know like what's to come, and then some unexpected events like can change your life for the better. You know. So.
That's what I've been trying to. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh no, I just like tonight, us all meeting each other.
Yeah.
You weren't gonna come.
I like to build my life around, I try to build my life around allowing for unexpected events. Because that's what it's about. Obviously you can't do that all the time, right? There's a balance. So for those that, one thing I'm interested about is building a community. Obviously something like this, we actively work to build a community. I work in education. A lot of that work is about building local community. I work in public education. For those that have specifically pinpointed building community or otherwise, what does that work look like, whether online or in person or going door to door? Like, what does it look, trying to build an audience for the pitch? What does building a community look like?
All of that, I think.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Like with what I've done with Strawberry Swing is like people who wanted to create something.
Take a moment to explain what Strawberry Swing is.
Oh, so the Strawberry Swing Indie Craft Fair, it was started in 2011, and it is literally a craft fair, but it's a cool craft fair. It's like super fun. We're one of the top 35 indie craft fairs in the world, according to BuzzFeed. Woo-woo! Yeah. We're sponsored. Yeah, we're sponsored by Etsy, and so you guys know what Etsy is? Etsy is the online platform to sell. So I have like a Etsy team with 700 and something sellers in Kansas City. So Etsy really likes the Strawberry Swing because we can help them. You know, they come in, they help sponsor and immerse their branding in us, because a lot of our sellers are selling also on Etsy, and it's a really big deal because right now the like shop local is now really hitting big time. I think it kind of happened when we won the World Series and everyone was just like, I want Kansas City, everything. Like everything.
And now the Chiefs are doing good now.
And now the Chiefs are doing it and everyone has Mahomes shirts and like,
Oh, the Mahomes shirts are crazy.
I mean, everybody's got something different. And it's something that rhymes with gnomes. Like, it's like crazy.
You're saying that like we should capitalize good on the back of that?
Yeah, that's what they're you mean off like the winnings?
Yeah, or just of like
It's just,
like people really
small
caring about
business.
community
Yeah,
right
because
now.
then you're coming in and meeting the person who made your thing instead of like going to, I use Amazon. I'm sure we all use Amazon.
Who doesn't use
So impersonal, but it's so quick. But that's like messing all of our minds up. I've seen it with my kids. It's like if they use my iPhone, they are just like right after they get done because it was so immediate. Like they're hitting this and it works right away. When you take it away and they have to get their day started, they're like, oh, what? Like, it's bizarre in these small little minds how that like quickness and that immediate gratification transfers over to when they have to live real life away from that. And it's kind of like with Amazon, you're just like, click it, got it, and then it comes. But when you have to go to the indie craft fair, you actually meet the person, speak to them, you see what they did, you ask them how they did it, and then you value that product so much more. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it means more when you give it as a gift too. Like,
Delayed gratification.
and like how you're helping the small business, like we can go into that later, but like the economic value of it is huge. The environmental impact is huge of shopping small. Like with Brandon, like he's not taking a semi truck to get his wax crumbles shipped from China on a boat polluting the air, He's in his
Oh, everything is made locally?
Oh yeah, everything's our slogan is handmade in Heartland.
Handmade in the heartland. You talked about like this Facebook group. Like, how do you balance that, man? Like the building like this digital thing, right? This digital community.
It was kind of an awesome accident. I mean, it's the largest, like it's national, it's a massive group, and it's the largest Facebook group that's dedicated 24/7 staffed on mental health. And we get so many suicide reports, we get so many people coming to vent and find things out. And my biggest thing with building that community and changing the rules every day and just figuring out how the hell I run this community of people who are just being people and figuring out how to be a person every day is how life works for me and what solutions work for me. Holy crap, they don't work for everyone. It's really tough because I might want to have things this way. I might have political beliefs that are like this, but are they beneficial to everyone? No, they're sometimes beneficial to me. I'm a white gay man. I mean, there are certain things that are going to really appeal to me, but kind of maybe harmful to others. And it's kind of really hard at 22 to look at everything and go, okay, well, there's tens of thousands of people here. What's going to benefit the most of us?
Why do you think, what is the thing, if you had to pick something that you think people keep coming back to that group for?
Just letting go of things that they've pent in, because then they can let it out on the table. It's not inside of them anymore. It's not building up into this anger. And then they can find out better solutions to kind of handle it and go back into the real world. The community has kind of been built as this out of real world experience. It's kind of a safe space in the guise of no one knows about it. It's big enough to where it's, holy crap, that's a big group, Brandon. But it's small enough to where it's like, oh, I'm in this little group. Nobody knows who I am. And I can just talk about how upset my husband made me today. I can talk about my mother-in-law being a blah, 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 blah. I can talk about my horrible teachers at school. I could talk about my coworkers. And it's just, I can be humble with myself when I say horrible things and then kind of better myself.
You think venting is healthy?
Oh, hell yeah. Oh, yeah.
What's the line between like venting and like, now it's just like not productive in a way, like
Intention.
in the intention of it?
If you're saying something to kind of tear somebody down, there's harm there. But when you're doing it in a private group, I think the beauty of it is, what's the intention? You can't really try to harm somebody when no one here knows who your Jane Doe is. You're just talking because these are things you've got inside. And there's a fear of the group getting much bigger because I'm like, what if this is like a thing everyone knows about one day?
Yeah, it's like the Pandora's box.
But right now it's at a really good size.
It is a way for you to use like that platform for a little bit of social justice, Like with me and us, mine's not as big as yours, but it's a way to insert a little bit of like social justice to a big grouping.
It's hard to know the balance too, because sometimes I just want to be so upfront. And so it's really hard to see people who are defending against something that I feel in my heart is so important. When I'm like, okay, well, no, this is a community that they're a part of. This is something that's important to them. I need to hear them out too. When sometimes I'm just 22 and don't want to. I just don't want to. I just want to think you're a bigot and sit down and eat McDonald's and beat me.
Kelsey, building a community. How long have you been with the pitch?
I've been at the pitch a year since it was locally. Oh my God, hold on. Since it was locally purchased back in January. As journalists and as a publication, it's our job to bring to light things that are happening in our community. So my perspective about community building and like what my role in it is sharing these stories, bringing voices, like bringing a platform to people who don't necessarily have the chance to share their voice, like being able to share those stories that the average Kansas Cityan wouldn't hear about.
Can we get into any nitty gritty? Like, is there any particular strategies you all use, like as a platform to reach audiences?
The way I'm communicating with pitches on Instagram is so different. Like, people are looking for a different level of content, but there's still like conversations that are had there. Whereas Facebook is this platform where people want to comment and want to have conversations and want to talk about stories. And Twitter is just like fast news. So like that's something that you want to have pop up and get in your face. But then a huge thing that we do also is a lot of our like email marketing, which our publisher calls like the cockroach of the internet, because you still open your emails whether you want to or not. But just making sure that like we're giving people every single opportunity to not be like, oh, I'm not informed because I didn't know what happened.
Right. At this point, if you're not informed, you're not trying to be.
Yeah, and that's so
to some degree, right? There's so much going on, but if you don't know what's happening with our city, then you're really not trying to. Yeah.
Ignorance takes effort.
Yeah. And so, my job and my passion, it does. Ignorance does take effort. It does.
Brandon love TM.
Yeah. So what we try to do with the pitch, and what I try to do with my other projects, is just make sure these stories that need to be told about our community, whether it's small or on a larger scale, are being told.
Travis,
Hello. Hi.
what's the conversation, man? Like, if you had the best conversation you needed to have to move the needle forward on the things you care most about, what's the conversation you had?
Just being transparent to yourself and the world. It'll just attract others to be more transparent with themselves, and then just kind of move that dialogue forward, I suppose.
What's the hardest thing about dealing with ourselves?
Oh man, from
your own, like, it seems like you've taken this journey pretty seriously. For you.
I lived in a world where I really idealized and romanticized my own life. My parents are super old school Asians, and so it was very much like, hey man, like, go to school, be a doctor, get that money, get a wife, have a kid, and there's nothing wrong with any of those things. But I realized that their pipe dream was not mine, right? And so I didn't realize, did all of this, was super invested, went 2 years pre-med on an academic scholarship, got amazing grades, and that misbelief, or those achievements fueled my misbelief of I was into this, right? And so I realized that I'd avoided most of my life thinking about these things I didn't care about because I thought it was what you should do, what everyone should do, the smart thing to do.
Was there like a moment that happened that shook all that, or just gradually? Yeah,
I realized really quickly that I was just not happy, and like so the big thing that like was that big aha moment was right when classes ended. That's when my brain stopped thinking about what I was studying, right? And so I realized, just because I can do this doesn't mean I'm going to want to do this, and my disinterest in this is what's going to leave me behind, because part of being good at what you do is having that investment and having that interest. So when you're not even getting paid, you're still grinding, you're still thinking about it. You're still trying to find ways to challenge your understanding of this thing. Absolutely. Right? Absolutely. And so I realized this was challenging me academically, but it wasn't challenging my sense of like what I was doing, essentially.
Are you gonna say something, Gabe? You made a move like you got some heat.
You must got great peripheral vision. Ooh. I was going to, and I was like, okay. No, to piggyback off of that, to piggyback off what he was saying when he was first talking, I think a lot of it, at least for me, was like looking at like, and you and I have talked about this, like looking at like your own demons. Because I know like there'd be times like friends would call me up with problems and issues and things that they got going on, and I'm giving them advice on the shit that they're doing wrong, that like I'm doing wrong, but I'm giving them advice, and I don't have like I feel guilty, or I don't want to say what I'm actually doing until like I became real with myself of like, wait a sec, I need to have the self-awareness that like I got the good guy and the bad guy, and I need to address those things. And I think a lot of times people just have those demons, those skeletons in their closet that they don't want to look at, and they kind of like look elsewhere.
What was that process like for you for the growth you wanted in your own life? What was that process like to get better?
I wouldn't say it was really a process consciously. I think like I just started burying myself so much where like my own mental health, whatnot, was getting so bad where I started getting those like really crazy thoughts of like, dude, like if I continue down this path, I'm gonna catch myself in a position where it's gonna be, do I have the mental fortitude to admit it and get out of it? Right. Or would I cop out and make a decision that would be like really detrimental? Right. So I think it was more, not necessarily a process, but like I saw that, hey, if I continue down this path, I'm going to be in a bad situation. So I need to check it now. And I think that's just kind of from my background, my upbringing, that I saw those around me didn't necessarily address their own lives and situations, decisions they were making, and they ended up going too far. And I was like, wait a second, I see by the grace of God that like I'm getting, if I keep going, I'm gonna be in a bad position.
That's tough because I feel like, and I battle this a lot too, like in my between like toughness, yeah, and just like, okay, life is hard, buck up type of thing, versus like I'm moving down a path up, and I think Black people, someone came on this show, I think it was Frank, he said Black people need therapy. He said every Black person needs therapy because of just the, but because we've often like chalked up a lot of the things of mental health to like, this is America, you just have to get tougher. But to some degree you do, if everything is like, oh, that's not your responsibility, or oh, you're right, we need to aid you in that, versus like, no, you need some toughness. How do each of you, and it sounds like you guys have each like really honed in on mental health, like as a real thing to focus on. How do you find that balance?
I want to chime in with one other thing. I think the gender divide in how you view yourself and your emotions is huge too. Like women are told it's okay to feel things and like are ultimately like socially more emotional, but men have this huge issue where, like machismo and like buck up and like, dude, no, you gotta be a man, like you gotta hold it in, like you're not allowed to feel things, which is total fucking bullshit. Like there shouldn't be a gender divide when it comes to our emotions and our feelings. Like you have the right to feel things, and like learning to feel those things and learning to accept those feelings you have and express them in a healthy way is one of the best things we can do for ourselves and mental health in general.
Just from like studying the group, my biggest thing with people is that all the deep-rooted hatred they have is just deep-rooted fucking denial.
Yeah.
You see all these people who are like, when I was a middle schooler, I hated gay I hated gay people. I was anti-gay. I hated all of it. Look at me now.
Brandon, did you know you were gay?
Well, growing up, my biggest thing, it's funny, I would go to Ocean City, which is a destination in Maryland, and I would look at billboards. And this was the first time it really punched me.
You were 11 years old?
Younger than that even, way younger than that. And I was just like looking at these families on billboards. And I was like, man, I want to be the mom. I want a husband. And it wasn't like that articulative, but I felt that. It was what pulled me. And years later, I'm like, yeah, that was a moment. That was a moment.
How's the family dynamic? If you don't mind me asking.
With my family?
Yeah, with your family, yeah.
We have dogs. It's really great. My biggest thing with being a gay man, if we're going to get into that, is there's this whole kind of pushed agenda on gay people right now. It's we have to be top or bottom, dom or not dominant. And we're just very equal. We're just like two people that are in love and have dogs and eat pizza sometimes. And it's just so relaxed. And it's just the first relationship I've had that's very like, it doesn't matter. And that's what it should be, whether you're gay or whether you're straight, whether you're a dom or a mask or a fetishized, crazy, sexual, dominant, go crazy person. You go, you do you.
This conversation about East and West, which I'll get my point if we, I think we're having the wrong conversation, but having those difficult conversations, what does progress look like in having that conversation? And then what does the outcome of progress look like for our city in your work in that? Yeah.
I think that right now, we've been involved in it for 2.5 years, like Truth Market Collective.
Yeah.
Like, and with that, there's thing called the Casey Cure strategy, just for the block that we're on, which is in between 31st and Linwood. And just now, 2.5 years later, like we've been meeting for 2.5 years with community members, everything, we've been sending press releases, and like just in the last month, you've probably read some of the articles in the Star. The Stars started covering, and you know, this has been going on for so long. People could have been getting involved. I'm just talking about our development, but if you want to talk about the whole dividing line, oh my God, that's been going on since the 60s, even before then.
What I guess my direct question is, what has the work of reconciliation looked like from your point of view?
For truth.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
right now, I believe more people are understanding that there needs to be reconciliation. And so when people, they've been complaining about it being this dividing line, right? And they see east and west, rich, poor. What are we going to do about it? But not a lot of people have given any thought of how are we going to do something? What can we do? We just talk about it, right?
Right.
So to reconcile that, like, we have to have something for both people to meet in the middle, We have to have something that will benefit low-income people and not push them out. Most of it has to do with the government. We have to, all of us work together to get the city council members to put in stuff for low-income housing, because that's our problem here is, like, we don't have any ordinances that say new developments have to have low income in them. Our governor, who's now ousted, Grayton's, or Gray, what was that? Gray something,
cares?
whatever he did.
Not
That
looking
porno stuff.
Yeah,
He took away LIHTC, which is low income housing tax credits, which is what a lot of developers used if they were going to build new to have a percentage of it low income. He took that away. He literally was like, oh, it's just developers giving each other money, and just said, I'm going to do an investigation on it. We're not going to do that anymore. So there's no low income housing tax credits here in Missouri right now. Developers need to make money, right? So they can't make money if they build something and they can't
then
cover
they
the
give it
rent.
away, right,
So like
right.
there has to be ordinances where the city is helping with
Yeah,
this, like it's not all, it's up to all of us, but it's also up to our representatives to put laws in place. And what we're trying to work on is, on our block, is also freezing property taxes. So like the people who have lived east of Troost, or even west of Troost, but east of Troost, who've inherited homes or who own their homes and couldn't afford another like $500 if their property tax got risen, we want to freeze all the property taxes for at least 10 years, because if people are getting tax abatements on, big developments going up, then the people who have owned homes should get their property taxes frozen. And we also want to make sure that there would be, a lot of times what happens when neighborhoods start getting new developments after they've been, kind of ignored for a really long time, is that then people start calling codes on, mostly like white people who have moved in, start calling codes violations on houses, or, that kind of thing. And so we need to have something in place where, like, the government is paying for things to get fixed for people who can't afford to fix those things.
Yeah.
That then they would get a code, so they can't afford to fix their like stairs that are crumbling, and then they get a code violation and a fine, and they can't afford, it's just like piles up. And so there has to be something in place where this is all being, reconciled, because to build something and make it equitable, it does have to have new stuff.
Does this city, Kansas City, or maybe as far like, is there a acknowledgement that, from your perspective, from you doing this work for several years, that people recognize what's been done to people of color?
It's happening now,
predominantly,
I believe.
just the awareness.
Yeah, I think that right now, in the last year, this is really good, because people are understanding how truth happened. Like, people are now talking about JC. Do you know that JC Nichols, like,
Oh, I'm very aware.
so people are really talking about it. We were just on NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt, who came here and did like a whole, like, that's national news, not just local news. And he like walked down in front of our mural project and talked all about JC Nichols and how the dividing line happened. And, what really happened with our school system, the public school system, was because of that. Well, in general, like, they divided, he redlined it, so all the schools became segregated. And then when Brown versus Board of Education happened, the all-white KC Public School Board then redistricted even more and made true that dividing line. So, like, because they weren't allowed to be segregated anymore legally, they're like, oh, let's just change the boundaries, and then we can keep it segregated. So, like, it was all intentionally done. And now that's coming to light, that's why I'm using my white privilege to talk about it in large crowds. Like, when I speak at when I'm asked to speak somewhere.
It'll be interesting to see over the next couple of years how Kansas City handles
It's hard.
being the fifth largest divided
Right.
city in this country, and what intentionality we choose to put behind
I want to
that.
ask one quick question around that part about ignorance.
Quick question to that comment.
Well, just so I can get back in here. But no, when you said about ignorance, I'm relatively new to Kansas City. Been here just over 7 years. I live in Prairie Village. I'm Johnson County.
7 years, relatively.
Is that new? Is that not
I've
new?
only lived here 2.5 years, so
I grew up, but yeah.
But no, literally, and like when I sat down with you before, and then hearing this, like growing up, and like my mom, she still messages me like every other day about like stay away from truce and all the crimes that are going on, and hearing like the history of what took place of why like that particular road on East is the way it is. Like it's just I was completely unaware.
Yeah.
So like, and I've been here 7 years, and I don't know, maybe it's just because I've been in a little bubble. I'm in Prairie Village, so.
It's on the front
So,
page of the
yeah,
paper.
no, it's the publicity of it. Yeah. What was your question though?
Well, about like the ignorance. Am I ignorant because I wasn't aware after 7 years, or so like so when we said like what makes it being like almost deliberate that you're unaware, like what's that time frame?
And this is just my
Yeah.
my opinion. If you live in the city, and some people say it makes a big difference. It doesn't. If you live in the city, if you live in Kansas City, Missouri, and you don't know, because you really can't go right now. You can't go into any place repeatedly if you wherever you frequent, and not hear or feel or know or drive from here to there. It's just so blatantly obvious. You drive from one place to the next, and eventually, if you every single day, eventually you gotta ask yourself, how did this happen? Why did this happen? So that's what I'm saying. If you don't frequent
yeah.
the city,
Sure.
then I'll say so. Yes. But yeah, what were you gonna say?
I was gonna say people are comfortable in their own bubble. Like you get used to your cozy life. You get used to what we all call privilege. Is that like it does take effort to like get out of what your everyday looks like and learn about what other people are going through.
What's the documentary, man? What's the work?
One of the art directors started following my personal work on Instagram, and my personal work is 100% different from what I do at work because it's an outlet for me, more or less.
So on purpose is different.
Yeah. And then in kind of in a weird way, in advertising, like sometimes I'm not allowed to share
I see.
what I shoot until like a year later, and at that point, like I've totally forgotten about it. Right? But anyway, so he knew that I photographed with film analog on my personal ventures, I guess, and he invited me to give a lecture about like shooting film, right? And it's supposed to be this like pretty broad lecture about like just being inspired or seeking different outlets of creativity because they invited 4 or 5 different people who are successful in their field.
Do you consider yourself successful?
Not yes and no.
Okay.
I guess more experts, people who know things, right? Talk to our advertising team about what you do specifically because we don't know what this world is like, and we want some perspectives, and maybe we can draw different workflows, maybe we can draw different forms of inspirations, or even different forms of creativity. Just anything that gives us perspective creatively. Oh my God, that isn't our own, right? And so film was an aspect because they're an advertising agency. Most of those people are graphic design oriented and not photography oriented, and shooting analog photography was completely off their radar. So they were just interested in that workflow and what it does for me.
I don't know what analog photography is.
Film, yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
like old
Like
school.
tangible, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Like chemistry processes and like.
Do you develop it
You didn't
yourself?
know this either, Jack? You didn't know Jack, I expected you to know. Go ahead.
Yeah. So
35 millimeter.
Yeah, 35 millimeter, 120, like just.
Do you have Blackchrome?
Yeah, I have it. So to print analog, like to put it in on a larger and put it on photosensitive paper and have like a contact print, you have to have pretty large space. But to just develop the film and to scan it, you need little room. So I can get away with it in my 1-bedroom apartment. Cool. So it's pretty tight. But anyway, so so they're just like, yeah, come talk to us about film. It'll be tight, whatever, right? And so they're like, fill 15 minutes. And prior to this, no one knew that the reason I started shooting film was like something very, very personal. And I'll get to it. But so I was like, cool, not ready to talk about all this personal stuff to a bunch of strangers who could potentially hire me, right? So it's just like, I'm just going to make a really fake presentation, technical, just about film. And 2 days before the lecture, I was kind of like rehearsing in the mirror, and I realized like, man, like I really hate this. Like you can just tell I'm like hiding something, or like I'm trying to like tiptoe around stuff. Yeah. And it just got to the point where I was like, I hate this presentation so much. Like who would listen to this, right? And but I realized there was an extent where I was like, all right, I'm gonna be in a room full of strangers. I might as well just be real with them because, you know, I don't know any of these people, and I can just dip out afterwards. It's cool, right? And so I decided to totally scrap my presentation, redo the whole thing, and actually tell the truth on why I started shooting film. And basically what that started was I had a pretty rough childhood. So my dad was an abusive kind of man. He was crazy alcoholic. And we were living somewhere in Houston at the time. I don't know, I was too young to really, I don't even remember where it was, but it was rough. I just remember like waking up at night to like gunshots and stuff. Not that I don't do that now, but like, you know, it was pretty crazy. It was super crazy.
Wait, what? We'll get to that
Well,
later.
yeah, sure. But like, yeah, I remember being like 4 years old and being like, oh yeah, that's a gunshot, right? And like no 4-year-old should like really understand what that's like. But that was just the situation we were in, right? And then one day I was hospitalized, which got my mom, which like brought the whole attention to like, oh man, like this whole family's being abused. So we quickly got out of that situation, but then my mom became like a single parent with like 2 kids. And so she's like, all right, cool, babysitter. I gotta leave you, I gotta work, I gotta support you. And unfortunately, she didn't know this, but the babysitter was a pedophile, right? And so from like the age of like 5 to like 12 or 13, like I was being taken advantage of the whole time, right? And so I didn't get a whole lot of time to like spend with myself to like really process my situation. And like the only way that I could have mentally and physically survived that whole situation was just to turn everything off, right? And so my understanding of being alive was literally just like being alive, right? I had no room to process what I was feeling. I had to shut off all my pain receptors. So like the body is weird because like it's not like a shut off this, keep these, right? It's like shut off everything. So like, you know, I didn't really know if I was happy, and I didn't really know if I was sad. I didn't really know if I was stressed. Like I couldn't even tell if I was like super hungry. Like I only felt extremes of things, right? So I'm extremely tired. I'm extremely hungry. I'm extremely, you know, dehydrated, whatever. Like it was just easy for me to block out all these things, which in a weird way like benefited my life in high school and like college, because it was just like, cool, I'll just study, do this thing, I'll just finish this project when it's done. I can stay up till 2 a.m. and like not think twice about it, right? Because what was in front of me was 100 times more alive than I was personally, right? So I could just do this thing and hammer it out. Anyway, it gets to a point where that defense mechanism of surviving is counterproductive to actually being alive, right? Participating in your own life. And so I kind of spent a lot of time just like watching life kind of happen around me, and like things that were very scientific or like lists were very easy for me to like digest, right? Wake up here, this is when your test is done, study these materials, here's this thing, right? And you can only live your life so long with that before you don't realize what's going on inside, and before all of this stuff just self-destructs on you, right? And so it got to a point where I realized like, man, like I self-destructed way too many times. And I tried to end my life twice, once when I was 16 and once when I was 25. And The craziest part about that is I didn't understand why I did it. I didn't know where it came from. And the day after it confused the hell out of me. It just it just brought more questions to me, right? Because I didn't know how to like compute it. I didn't know how to process it, and I didn't know where it came from because I was just ignoring it the whole time. And so that's where film came into my life, because the only thing I knew up to this point was I was a great photographer, right? It was a thing that I could tangibly process because I was getting work. I knew how much I was getting paid. I knew how busy I was with it. So by that regard, that was the one thing I truly understood. It was like, okay, I know how to make an image, right? Might not know how to live, but like I know how to make an image. So I guess if I think I'm feeling something that I've never processed before, which was literally everything, I'll just like make an image, and maybe it'll like jog something, because I know how to criticize and pull apart imagery, but I don't know how to do that with my life. So why don't I just make these weird moments in my life a thing that I can process and like pull apart and like think about and spend intimate time with, because again, I wasn't spending time with myself. And because I was doing digital, my photography, like tangible mind was like, okay, cool, this light sucks, like maybe this could be arranged a certain way. I was critiquing it too technically, right? Because it was too immediate. So I would just take the image, and instead of being in this moment where I was thinking I was feeling something, I was in the back of the camera, like looking at this thing. So switched over to film because you can't look at what you made, right? And so it's this weird thing where it's like, okay, cool, I shot this image on digital, I'm looking at it, this is literally what I'm looking at, and I'm not processing it, right? With film, I think I feel something, I shoot something on film, I can't look at it, so I'm forced to like be here and like ponder about it and wonder, what does this look like? What is this, right? And I may not know this immediately because I normally wouldn't. And then, I'll go home a week later after I finish the film, process everything, get it back, and then I realize like, oh, cool, like I think I was feeling this, I think I was feeling that. Maybe this image was about this. Like it gave me this period to kind of like sit on it and have it develop into a memory, because I wasn't developing memories, right? Everything was short term and everything was just passing, and I was doing lists, right? And then all of a sudden I'm making images, and then they're coming back to me, and I'm like, I ponder them in the moment, and I come back and I get to like digest, fully, I guess. Yeah. And so that whole that whole presentation was about that. And
That's what you gave the
yeah. So I just opened up and I was like, screw it, like I don't care. And prior to this, I've never told anybody, so I don't know what enticed.
How old were you?
That was
This was a year ago.
that was 3. Yeah. So I made.
Were you at the presentation?
Yeah, that's how we
Yeah.
Oh my god.
I'm 29 now.
Okay.
I gave the presentation when I was like 20, when I was 28. Yeah. And this was 3 years after my last suicide attempt.
Sharing that truth, what did that teach you about life?
At first, I thought it wasn't going to be anything, because I was just like, I don't know. It's like I didn't know enough about myself to understand if this was going to resonate or if this was applicable.
Right.
It was just like, hey, someone asked me why I shoot film. I'm going to tell you straight up,
honest,
right? And then a month or two after that presentation, one of the guys from Barclay came back to me and was like, hey, we've been getting like nonstop emails about your presentation. Like, you should read some of these. And I realized that it was more applicable to a lot more people than I thought. And it was oddly like inspiring and helpful towards other people. And I never knew that was even a possibility of something that I was able to do, right? I didn't think I could like ripple anything, And so, they hit me up. They're like, we need to turn this into like an artist spotlight, because this needs to be out in the world. It just needs to be. And so I was really unsure about it, but I agreed to it. And then they're just like, cool. Well, in the process of making a video, especially something like that, they wanted to take their time and they wanted to like get it right. So it didn't end up going live on the internet until a year later. But when they told me, like, after we recorded it, they're just like, all right, cool, we'll have it to you as soon as we can. Then that was the first time I processed, like, holy shit, this is a real thing. not just like a real thing because it's a documentary, but like for the first time I was like, my situation is real to me. It's a truth that somebody else knows. Because before it was just this thing melting inside of me, right? I couldn't get it out, and it's that weird, like, when you're in your head, there's that weird voice of like, you're crazy, right? I tend to undermine the severity of my situation, right? Because I didn't want to seem like an inconvenience, or I didn't want to seem sad or depressed or whatever, right? I didn't want to admit these things because I romanticized myself, and I was just like, hey, I'm just like a happy-go-lucky dude. Like, the front that I put on, people know me as this thing, you know? And so when it finally became real and like manifested itself, then it was just like, oh shit, like, this is my life, and this did happen to me, and like, this is in turn trying to shape me, you know? And so like, had to tell my parents for the first time, had to tell my best friends for the first time. I had to tell, like, and it was weird because like,
until you told your mother, she didn't know like what happened.
yeah, none of my parents knew. I mean, obviously my parents knew about the abuse because they were a part of it, or my mother rather.
But the
Yeah,
babysitter
yeah.
situation.
No one knew it. My sister didn't know it. My best friends didn't know it. Like, no, like it was literally a thing that I kept to myself up to that point, and I thought I was gonna take it to the grave.
Wow.
You know, yeah.
I'll jump in on that. For me, I look at my mom. Like growing up, like my mom, she was abused, like really bad, like growing up, like from like the age of 1.5 up until when she ran away at 14 years old. And like when you're a kid, you don't really realize what abuse means, right? And someone tells you that. So like, I would just see like her like just randomly like once a month just fall on the floor and just like seizure, and I'm just like, okay, that's kind of normal. But as I started getting older and like at us like late high school, I'm like, okay, something's going on here. And then, but she was strong enough to like keep that to herself, and then not like let us know what that was. But once I got to college, like I'm like asking her questions, like, hey, what was going on with all this stuff? And she admitted like, hey, she was abused and the multiple concussions and all this stuff that she had going on with her from all those years. So for me, what keeps me kind of going is I look like, for me, if I'm able body, able mind, able spirit, if I've got that like vitality in me and I'm not physically or mentally disabled in any way, it's like a duty that like I got to go out and do it and maximize as much as I can, because there are people that can't physically or have had things happen to them that prevents them from doing it, that if were put in my situation would definitely take advantage of it. And I feel like it's like a duty of mine to do it for those who can't, just off my experience from saying that others around me don't have those abilities right now.
Even having conversations like this is important, because I fell into this weird trap of like thinking that what I was feeling inside was not normal. And to some respect it wasn't, right? But it almost got to the point where it's like, hey man, like these things are bad, so you're bad, right? For feeling these things. So I felt really alienated because I didn't know, I felt like I couldn't talk to anybody about it. And that's why I didn't talk to anybody about it, right? And so when you're kind of living with that secret inside of you, it's a lot of like shame based, right? And it just, looking back on it, it like blows my mind that I ever even thought that, or that I didn't feel like that bringing up was like it was just way too taboo. And just like, at what point was my mental sanity like a taboo topic, right? Like, how did we get here, right? And so I think it's important to like have these conversations and to kind of share these things as hard as they are to share, but like it's just opening up that space that like, yes, unfortunately, this is the reality that a lot of people face, and it sucks that it's normal, but it's a normal thing, right? And so I think the fact that I felt that it wasn't such a normal thing to talk about, like, killed me, right? Like it just made my sense of self like more self-destructive.
The reason that I want to do this is for this moment right now, you know, because, and this is kind of two different points. Sorry, I'm kind of over the place. We live in a world where, or my experiences have been that it's really hard to talk about what you're talented at, because most people aren't affirmed in what they're talented at. so they want to like lessen what you're showing you're talented at, so that we're equal now. And so we don't know how to like step into our gifts. God, I truly believe God gave each one of us a gift, but like we don't know how to step into that gift. So I was always very like hesitant to push the like to your point, and I'm curious. I want to hear you talk more about EQ. I always from an early age, early like 6, 7, 8 years old, I could always feel people's emotions just looking at them. And I didn't realize it was different until the older I got. I realized no one's talking about what I feel all the time. What I know and what I feel. And so me trying to do this, trying to build this platform, trying to bring people together was because, okay, I'll create the environment so people talk about the things I know that they need to talk about that's going on, but that for some reason we haven't normalized the fact that life is bigger than the boxes we compartmentalize it into, and like, but and then the weird thing on top of all of that is then I think about how do I market and this whole thing, build the audience, who do I, what I mean, like all those things, like, and then who do I, and like work with Gay for what's the reach on this, and then who do I add campaign it to, right, and like what's the business model, like all
But
those
it can
things.
really help people.
But there's
It's like the calibration of balance. Like, how do you do that? How do you calibrate it to create the perfect equilibrium of balance? I think
we went to college. What?
I mean, but that's what
Big words. Big words.
I believe that's what it's all about.
No,
How do you balance?
Who
Yeah,
said
somebody's
something
got to
about
do it. Seriously, there's work to be done, and somebody's got to do it.
I think collectively we're making progress.
We have to.
I feel really happy about spending time with people my age, people younger, that are like, what? That's what you believed for 100 years? That life is just like that's those 3 small boxes you live in? I'll be honest, it scares the fuck out of me. But I'm willing to say I don't know.
Right.
I'm willing to say I have no idea. I'm willing to say like, but I'm willing to learn. If you'll show me, if you open it up to me. Innovator's Toolbox. If you could leave one piece of advice behind to improve the experiences of tomorrow's generation, what would it be?
I got mine.
Cool.
I was ready. I mean, there are a lot of things I could say, but I think the most important thing from this conversation and tonight is stay educated and stay informed. Read everything you can, and that plays into my job because I'm the one writing it. But just stay educated. I mean, you're not going to change the world. You're not going to make a difference. You're not going to improve your life and your neighbor's life if you don't know what's going on.
That's true.
Wow. I will go with the things that are easy to do are also easy not to do. And let's open that up.
Whoa.
It is.
Whoa.
Say you want to go lose weight. How hard is it to really go to the gym? It's easy to go to the gym. Literally, just wake up, get in your car, drive to the gym. Not that difficult if someone put a gun to your head. It's also easy not to do it. Wake up, I'm a little tired. Snooze button, do something else. So, but the things that are easy, they're also not easy, and that's the difference. If you take those small steps towards the easy stuff, you go this way. If you don't, you go that way.
Practicing your empathy. Because I find if you're hateful towards something, if there's someone that you hate for having certain ideals, it's usually not their fault that they ended up that way. Kind of looking at their story and looking at their background and looking at what's influencing their lives can really help you have empathy with them and go, oh shit, well, maybe I can be a better influence in their life versus just, you're wrong, you suck, Deborah, go eat one.
Since this is community themed, get to know your community. Don't be scared to meet your neighbors. A lot of people don't even know their own neighbors right now. And we start making change within our community, You can't do anything without collaborating with your community who's right there next to you.
I think what I'm going to end with is that it's not about direction more than it is about movement, right? And so I guess to expand on that, if we literally only were concerned about literally walking forward, you would look ridiculous, right? You got to sidestep, you got to take a step back. How else are you going to navigate your life? So the point is, like, just move, just trust yourself to make a directional movement and quit worrying about where it's going to take you, because if you're so worried about moving forward, you're not learning how to adapt and to adjust and to like process so that you can change directions,
And I will end with the one I always end with, which is if you surround yourself with dope people, cool shit happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There we go.
How did you do that?
Well done moment. Well done
Always
moment.
be ready.
That's right.
Man. They say that there are 3 levels of conversation. Level 1 is when people talk about other people. Level 2 is when people talk about events. There's nothing wrong with either of those, but this is Level 3 Studio. Level 3 is when people talk about ideas and what is possible. This has been another episode of Level 3 Studio, a.k.a. Chef Jay's Kitchen, a.k.a. The Innovator's Oasis, where we feed your body, feed your mind, without a doubt, feed your soul.